July 2, 1863. Our division was in reserve until dark, but our regiment was supporting a battery all day. We lost several killed and wounded, although we had no chance to fire, only lay by a battery of artillery and be shot at. The caisson of the battery we were supporting was blown up and we got a big good sprinkling of the wood from it. Just at dark, we were sent to the front under terrible cannonading. Still, it was certainly a beautiful sight. It being dark, we could see the cannon vomit forth fire. Our company had to cross a rail fence. It gave way, and several of our boys were hurt by others walking over them. We laid down here a short time, in fact no longer than 10 minutes, when I positively fell asleep. The cannonading did not disturb me. One of the boys shook me and told me Katz was wounded by a piece of a shell striking him on the side, and he was sent to the rear. We went on to the Baltimore Turnpike until 3 in the morning of the 3D July 3rd, when under a very heavy fire we were ordered on Culp's Hill, to the support of General Johnson. Here we stayed all day. No, here I may say we melted away. We were on the brow of one hill, the enemy on the brow of another. We charged on them several times, but of course running down our hill and then to get to them was impossible, and every time we attempted it we came back leaving some of our comrades behind. Here our Lieutenant Belt lost his arm. We have now in our company a captain. All of our lieutenants are wounded. We fought here until 7 p.m., when what was left of us was withdrawn and taken to the first day's battlefield. At the commencement of this fight, our brigade was the strongest in our division, but she is not now. We lost the most men, for we were in the fight all the time, and I have it from Colonel Owens that our regiment lost the most in the brigade. I know that our company went in the fight with 60 men. When we left Culp's Hill, there were 16 of us that answered to the roll call. The balance were all killed and wounded. There were 12 sharpshooters in our company, and now John Cochran and myself are the only ones that are left. This day none will forget that participated in the fight. It was truly awful how very fast did our poor boys fall by our sides, almost as fast as the leaves that fell as cannon and musket balls hit them, as they flew on their deadly errand. You could see one with his head shot off, others cut in two, then one with his brain oozing out, one with his leg off, others shot through the heart. Then you would hear some poor friend or foe crying for water or for God's sake to kill him. You would see some of your comrades shot through the leg, lying between the lines, asking his friends to take him out, but no one could get to his relief, and you would have to leave him there, perhaps to die, or, at best, to become a prisoner. Our brigade was the only one that was sent to Culp's Hill to support General Johnson. In our rapid firing to Onday, my gun became so hot that the ramrod would not come out, so I shot it at the Yankees and picked up a gun from the ground, a gun that some poor comrade dropped after being shot. I wonder if it hit a Yankee. If so, I pity him. Our regiment was in a very exposed position at one time today, and our General Daniels ordered a courier of his to bring us from the hill. He was killed before he got to us. The general sent another. He was also killed before he reached us. Then General Daniels would not order anyone but called for volunteers. Captain Ed Stitt of Charlotte, one of his aides, responded, and he took us out of the exposed position. July 4th. We laid on the battlefield of the first day, this the 4th day of July. No fighting today, but we are burying the dead. They have been lying on the field in the sun since the first day's fight. It being dusty and hot, the dead smell terribly. The funny part of it is the Yankees have all turned black. Several of our company wounded have died. Katz is getting along all right. The battle is over, and although we did not succeed in pushing the enemy out of their strong position, I am sure they have not anything to boast about. They have lost at least as many in killed and wounded as we have. We have taken more prisoners from them than they have from us. If that is not the case, why did they lay still all today and see our army going to the rear? An army that has gained a great victory follows it up while its enemy is badly crippled. But Meade, their commander, knows he has had as much as he gave, at least, if not more. As yet, I have not heard a word from my brother Morris since the first day's fight. July 5th. Left this morning at 5 o'clock. Only marched 10 miles today. The enemy being in our rear and skirmishing very strong. July 6th. Our company was ordered out as skirmishers today, as our regular skirmish corps was broken up during the fight. We were the rear of the army and therefore had a very hard job before us. Fighting all day and falling back, we certainly had fun. We were close enough to the enemy to hear their commands. We would hold them in check and give them a few rounds, then fall back again. They would then advance until we would make a stand, fight again, and so it was until we reached Fairfield, 6 miles from Gettysburg. I don't think there were many lost on either side in this skirmish. We crossed South Mountain at Monterey Gap. When we came to the above town, I pressed into service a citizen's coat in this way. We were ordered to rest, and as usual, we would sit on fences and lay about the road. Some of the boys jumped on an old hog pen. It broke through. They fell in, and lo and behold, there were boxes of clothing, dresses, shawls, blankets, and in fact everything in the line of wearing apparel. I, being a little fellow, crawled through some of the boys' legs and captured the coat. If the fool citizen would have left his things in his house, they would have been safe, but to put it in our way was too much for us to leave behind. We also passed through Waterboro and Waynesboro, PA, where the Maryland line commences. We then passed through Lattisburg and halted in Hagerstown, MDV on the evening of the 7th. We marched yesterday and all night up to 11 o'clock, 24 miles. July 8th. We are resting, and goodness knows we need it very much. I sold my coat for $20 and a gray jacket. We lost in the last fight in our company 11 killed and 26 wounded. 3 of the latter will not live, and 9 of our number became prisoners besides the wounded. Our 3 lieutenants are all wounded and prisoners. Katz is also a prisoner. Nothing further up to the 10th. July 10th. Moved 4.5 miles on the other side of town. We have fortified ourselves here. July 11th. Orders read out today from our father, R.E. Lee, that we would fight the enemy once more on their own soil, as they were now in our front. That order got to them and fulfilled its mission, as we were then on our way to the Potomac. They still thinking we could not cross the river, because the river was very high from the recent rains, and we had but one pontoon bridge. At 10 in the night we formed in line of battle, got to our position, when our regiment was ordered to support a battery. Laid on our arms all night. July 12th. Went back to our brigade this morning, skirmishing very heavy on the left and center. July 13th. News came to us today that Vicksburg had fallen on the 4th. Heavy skirmishing, fighting all day. Our brigade again acted as the rear of our corps, our regiment being its rear. We started our retreat at dark and marched to Williamsport, 6 miles, through mud and slush ankle deep, and raining very hard. We marched 1 mile to the right of and crossed the Potomac at midnight after wading, through the canal, which we destroyed. The river was up to my chin and very swift. We crossed in 4s for protection, as otherwise we could not have crossed. Our cartridge boxes we carried around our necks to keep the powder dry. On the south bank, tar was poured so that we would not slip back in the river, as the mud was very slick. J. Engel of our company was stuck in until some of the boys pulled him out. We went 6 miles further, and I honestly believe more of us were asleep on our night's march than awake. But still all kept up, for the rear was prison. We then halted, made fire to dry ourselves, just as day was breaking on the morning of the 14th. July 14th. The roads are so bad that it is hard work to trudge along. I stuck in the mud several times and lost one shoe in a mud hole, but of course took it out again. One consolation we have got: it is raining so hard that the mud is washed off our clothing. Therefore they were not soiled too bad. But the devil of it is, there is no blacking to shine our shoes with. Marched 16 miles and halted. We are now, thank God, on Confederate soil. But oh, how many of our dear comrades have we left behind? We can never forget this campaign. We had hard marching, hard riding, suffered hunger and privation, but our general officers were always with us to help the weary soldier carry his gun or let him ride. In a fight, they were with us to encourage. Many a general have I seen walk and a poor sick private riding his horse, and our father Lee was scarcely ever out of sight when there was danger. We could not feel gloomy when we saw his old gray head uncovered as he would pass us on the march, or be with us in a fight. I care not how weary or hungry we were, when we saw him we gave that rebel yell, and hunger and wounds would be forgotten, July 15th. We marched 5 miles today and were compelled to halt as our wagon trains had to get in our front. I and 2 of our mess killed 3 turkeys, took them with us to 1 mile from Martinsburg Bay where we camped, and the bones of those turkeys were left behind. July 16th. Left this morning at 7. Marched to Darksville, 8 miles. July 17th. Raining very hard today and we are resting July 20th. Went on picket today. Stayed there 1 hour and was ordered back. Got to camp and found our brigade gone. We marched to Martinsburg, halted at 10 at night 2 miles from town, 10 miles today. July 21st. Went through town at 5 this morning to the Baltimore and Ohio Railroad with Johnson's Division and part of Hampton's Legion to tear up the railroad. We destroyed 6 miles of it and returned to our camp at Darksville, 15 miles today. July 22nd. Left this morning at 5, marched through Winchester 3 miles and halted. July 23rd. Left at 5 this morning, went through Front Royal, 17 miles today. Waded the south and north prongs of the Shenandoah River. We then took the road to Mananas Gap, marched 3 miles when we met the enemy and had brisk firing until dark. Their line is very strong. They advanced in 2 lines in very fine order. When they got within range of our guns, we opened on them and they scat-teared like bluebirds. We had a beautiful view of this fight as we are on the mountain. Neither of the armies can move without being seen by the other. Our corps of sharpshooters has been formed again since a few days ago. We were sent to the support of the other corps. We were within 20 yards of the enemy's line until midnight, when we fell back in good order. July 24th. Marched 2 miles up Chester Gap when we were about faced and marched through Front Royal again. We here took the Strasburg Road at daylight. We resumed our march and halted at 3 in the evening. We have been on a forced march 3 days and nights, waded rivers, fought skirmishes, and marched in that time 45 miles. We are camped in an apple orchard in a village called Milford. July 25th. Left this morning at 7 o'clock. Halted at 3 in the afternoon, 16 miles. July 26th, rested today. William Eagle and myself went up the Blue Ridge to gather berries, and were lost in the woods for 1 hour. July 27th, left this morning at 5, crossed the Blue Ridge at Thornton Gap. We camped 1 mile from Sparrowsville, marched 13 miles today. July 28th, left at 6 this morning, marched 10 miles and halted on the mountain. July 29th, left at 7, marched until 3, camped 1 mile from Madison Courthouse, marched 10 miles today. July 30th, still in camp. Hugh Sample and myself were out on a forage and milked a cow in his hat, the only thing we had. July 31st, we left here tonight, marched 7 miles and halted. August 1st, resumed our march at 4 this morning and got to Orange Courthouse, 14 miles. It is a very hot day, and there were several men fell dead on the road from sunstroke. We rested here until the 4th, August 4th, left our camp, marched 3 miles, 1 mile on the south side of town. August 2, nothing up to today. This, I suppose, is to be our regular camp as we have commenced to drill again. August 12th. We had a very severe storm today which killed 2 men and hurt several of our brigade. It tore up trees and played smash in general. August 23rd. They have commenced to give fur lofts, 1 to every 2 companies. August 24th. Was on guard this morning, but Sergeant Hugh Reed sent for me and detailed me with some men out of every regiment in our brigade to hunt deserters. Saywolf and myself, out of our company. We left camp at 3 this evening, marched 2 miles up the railroad and took the cars to Gordonsville. Got there at 4. It is a small place, but one of importance, as all our supplies for the Army from Richmond come from this station. August 25th. Took the cars at 5 a.m. and got to Keswick, a depot on the Stanton Road. We left here after staying 1 hour and took our posts in the woods. As we are about 20 men with 1 lieutenant in command, we made no camp but stayed about here and reported every time there was any news about deserters. Wolf and myself went out in the country to houses that we were told harbored deserters. We passed ourselves off as such and were well received and got some valuable information. They told us that the deserters were in the woods. We then returned to our companions and got well soaked as it was raining very hard. Stayed in a barn all night. August 26th. We stayed in the woods all day, but at night went out scouting for deserters, but did not find any. August 27th. Returned at 7 this morning, went out again at dark, went through 4 houses of bad repute, but found not one deserter. Went 12 miles this night. August 28th. We moved this evening and I stayed in a gentleman's house all night with Wolf. August 29th. Returned to our companions this morning at 10 o'clock. August 30th. Left at 5 in the morning. We hunted through the cliffs for several hours and caught one deserter. Several of our men and myself dined in a widow lady's house. There were quite a number of ladies there, and we had a very pleasant time. Then we went to Mr. Bell's and had supper there. From there we went to Mr. Wheeler's and stayed all night. August 31st, went to Mr. Watkins, took dinner there and stayed all day. Had a very pleasant time with his daughter, Miss Annie. September 1st, today, we went on a general hunt in full force. We went into a house where we suspected there was a deserter. We hunted through all the outhouses and went to the house, and the lady Stronglove denied there being anyone there but would not give us permission to look. We then searched the house, but found no one. I then proposed that we go in the loft. She objected again, but of course we were determined. It was pitch dark in the loft. We called in, but no answer came. I then proposed, in a loud voice so that if anyone was there they could hear me, that we fix bayonets and stick around and satisfy ourselves that no one was there. Still no answer. I then got in the loft, took my gun and commenced sticking around. At last an answer came from the far corner that he would surrender. The way I got into the loft was, I being a little fellow and Cy Wolf a tall man, they put me on his shoulder, and in that way I crawled in. We then left for camp, passed a church, and was in time to see a wedding. We drilled for the ladies and had a good time. September 2nd. On a hunt today, several of my comrades with myself came to a house, and the first thing we heard was, "Is there a Jew in your detachment that caught a deserter yesterday? They would like to see him," etc. At last one of the boys told them that I was the Jew. After that I had a very good time there, and in fact wherever I went I was received very kindly, and was very sorry to see on the 4th that orders came for us to return to our brigade. September 4th. Marched to Keswick and found that we would have to march to Gordonsville. Got there that night, 15 miles today. September 5th. Left here at 7. Got to brigade at 10 in the morning. And from the 24th of last month up to date, I certainly have seen the best time since the war. September 6. Our captain, Harvey White, returned to camp yesterday from a furlough. September 8th. We are getting ready for a corps review for tomorrow. September 9th. Today we had a review. Present, General Lee, General Ewell, General Early, General Johnson and General Rhodes of our corps, and General Hill, General Jeb Stuart, and smaller fry of our army. It was certainly a grand scene. Nothing more up to the 14th. September 14th, left camp this morning at 7, marched 12 miles and halted. Here firing in front on the Rapidan at Somerville Ford. Here all night. September 15th, still some firing in front. We are in reserve. I went to see the fight. I saw the enemy very plainly, and thus I spent my New Year's Day. September 16th. Today there was a man shot for desertion. 8 balls passed through him. The way this is conducted is, the brigade that he belongs to, or sometimes even the division, is drawn up in full sight of the doomed man. He is tied to a stake in front of his grave, which is already dug, and his coffin at his side. There is a squad of 12 men and 1 officer detailed to do the shooting. 11 of the guns are loaded. The guns are given to them by the officer so that no man knows which gun is loaded. The order is then given to fire. Thus ends the deserter's life. The brigade or division then marches around him so that every man can see the deserter's end. September 17th. Very little firing today. September 18th. Raining hard all day and no tents. Left camp at 2 in the afternoon, marched 6 miles, halted at the river, and our regiment went on picket. It is still raining very hard, and we are as wet as drowned cats and cold too, for we cannot make a fire in front of the enemy. If we did, they would have a good mark to shoot at. September 19th. We are at Moulton's Ford. September 20th. In speaking distance of the Yankees. September 21st, our regiment was relieved today by the 3D Alabama of Battles Brigade. September 22nd, I spoke and exchanged papers with a Yankee of the 7th Ohio Regiment. September 23rd, Day of Atonement today. Nothing more up to the 26th, September 26th. We have built ourselves cabins in our camps. This evening we went on picket. September 27th. The Yankees are very active today. Something is up. September 28th. Our regiment is on picket. Will be relieved tomorrow. September 29th. All quiet today. Brother Morris returned from Richmond yesterday, where he has been for 10 days on a furlough. Before our Jewish New Year, there was an order read out from General Lee J. granting a furlough to each Israelite to go to Rich J. Mon for the holidays if he so desired. I did not care to go. September 30th. We are shooting at the Yankees today for fun, as they are trying to steal sheep from the houses that are between our lines. October 1st. Went on picket at 4 this afternoon and was roused up in the night to intercept a spy who is in our lines and is expecting to cross. But we did not see him, for it was so dark we could see nothing. October 2nd. Relieved today. Very wet and disagreeable weather. Nothing new up to the Judith. October 9th. Left camp at 4 this evening and halted on the morning of the 10th at 1 o'clock, when we caught up with our brigade. Marched 12 miles on very muddy road and fell into several holes. We left again very early this morning and marched 20 miles. We waded the Rapidan today at Liberty Mills. October 11th. We forded Robertson River and marched up and down hollows without singing or making any noise, so that the enemy could not see or hear us. We heard firing on our left. We are 8 miles from Culpeper Courthouse. October 12th. Started at daylight, marched 25 miles, waded the Hazel River at 10 this morning. Had to take off our shoes and pants according to orders. It was very cold. We got within a quarter of a mile of Jeffersontown when the fight commenced. We drove the Yankees through town double quick. We halted 1 mile on the other side of the town, then formed in line of battle once more and went forward. We drove the enemy over the Rappahannock and through Warrington Springs, took 300 prisoners and halted at 9 in the night. October 13th. Left here at daylight, marched through Warrington, a very handsome place, went 2 miles further and camped for the night, 7 miles. October 14th. My corps of sharpshooters marched in front of the line. Left camp at 4 this morning, and at daylight, as General Ewell and staff rode up to us, there was a volley shot at us. We immediately deployed and after the enemy. We fought on a run for 6 hours, all the time the enemy falling back. They at one time raised a white flag and surrendered. We then stopped firing, and as we got within 100 feet, they opened on us again, for they saw we were only a line of sharpshooters. We then resumed firing at them. I captured a mailbag in the fight, and in several letters I found some money. We halted, and the enemy kept on running like wild ducks. This is the Battle of Bristow Station. We took many prisoners. As we got through fighting, we heard firing on our right. We marched to their support, but when we got there, the firing had ceased. 25 miles today. We camped on Manassas Plain, raining hard all night. October 15th. Here all day and talking with our prisoners. October 16th. Left this morning at 4, marched 5 miles and halted on the Orange and Alexander Railroad, tore it up 1¼ miles and camped. October 17th. Marched 4 miles today and tore and burned up the same amount of railroad. October 18th. Started at 4 this morning and marched 10 miles toward Culpeper Courthouse. We tore up the railroad from Manassas to the Rappahannock River. The way we tear up railroads is this. We take the cross ties and make a square of them as high as your head. We place the rails on the cross ties, then set it afire and the rails bend double. October 19th. Left at 4 this morning, crossed the river on pontoon bridges. It commenced to hail and rain very hard and kept it up for 2 hours. We got very wet, halted at Cedar Run, marched 10 miles and stayed here until the 21st. October 21st, we were sent to Kelly's Ford on picket. October 22nd, relieved today. It was bitter cold. October 23rd, we commenced putting up winter quarters and were hard at work up till the last of this month. November 1st, moved into our shanties today. There are 5 of us in mine. They are 10 feet square. November 3rd, went on picket on the Rappahannock at Norman's Ford, 6 miles from camp. November 6th, were relieved today. November 7th. Today, as several of us went to get some straw near Kelly's Ford, we heard firing and the long roll beat. Looking up, we saw the Yankees circumflex crossing the river. We double-quicked to camp and got there just in time to fall in with our regiment to intercept the enemy, but they had already crossed the river before we got there. We maneuvered about until dark when my corps of sharpshooters was deered out. We were within 100 yards of the Yankees and saw them around their fires very plainly. On the morning of the 8th, we retreated in very good order. I certainly was glad of it, as we were in a very bad fix. We marched until sunup and halted on Stone Mountain, passed through Stevensburg, stayed here all night and resumed our march and halted on the morning of the 9th. We then crossed the Rapidan at the Raccoon Ford and are now camped at our old camp at Moulton Ford. We marched, since leaving Kelly's Ford, 40 miles. The distance is only 17 miles. We were certainly surprised for the first time since the war. We did not dream the enemy was on us before the firing commenced. Our brigade was cut off from the army twice, but our General Daniels got us through safe. Nothing new up to the 26th. November 26th. When we had marched 7 miles, we heard cannonading. The enemy is trying to cross the river at Jacob's Ford, but our boys kept them back. We laid in breastworks of our own make until the 27th. November 27th. This morning we marched 7 miles, halted a short time and resumed our march. Got 3 miles further and firing commenced in our front. We then countermarched and formed in line of battle, in the edge of the woods. One corps of sharpshooters was sent out to find the enemy, fought the enemy 1/2 hour and were forced back. My corps then went out as reinforcement. We fought then for 4 hours and were called back to our command. I, at one time in this fight, was in a close place. Being in front, I did not hear the order to fall back, and being by myself was left a target for a dozen Yankees. But my Captain White saw what a fix I was in and sent a squad of our company to my relief, so I fell back with them. We then that night went to Mine Run and formed our line of battle there. November 28th. Today the whole army is throwing up breastworks. The sharpshooters are out in front, my corps out today. We made ourselves small pits to lay in as a protection from the Yankee bullets. These pits are just about large enough to hold 2 or 3 men. Pinckney King, Sam Wilson, and myself are in one. We are shooting at the enemy all day. They are returning the compliment. Late this evening, we saw some of them opposite our pits trying to get into a house. We jumped out of our pits and fired at them several times when poor King was shot and died in a few minutes. Another man was sent to relieve in his place, and we held our position. The other corps of sharpshooters fought all day. November 29. Ours again today, but not as hard as before, but heavy enough. The cannonading is getting heavier. December 1st. The other corps is out today. The Yankees, as well as ourselves, are well fortified, and we are confronting one another. December 2nd. This morning at 3 we moved to the right until daylight, when our corps was again sent to the front. We advanced toward the enemy's works. We moved, of course, very carefully as we saw their breastworks, and in front of us 2 cannon. When we got in shooting range, the order was given to charge. We did so with a rebel yell, and as we got upon their breastworks, lo and behold, there were no Yankees, and the cannons we saw were nothing but logs. We followed them to the river, but their whole army had crossed. We, of course, captured a great many of their sick and stragglers. December 3rd, marched back to our camp at Moulton's Ford, and our regiment was sent on picket at Mitchell's Ford, 7 miles from camp. This has been a very severe 7 days campaign, as we fought mostly all the time. Cold, sleety, disagreeable weather, and we dare not make large fires, as that would be a sure target for the Yankees. Mine Run is a small stream on the Orange and Fredericksburg Turnpike. Nothing more worth recording up to the 8th, my birthday, and spent it as dull as could be. Have been on picket and relieved on Dole's Georgia Brigade. Up to the 27th, nothing doing. December 27. We moved our camps from our picket posts 7 miles from Orange Courthouse, on the turnpike from there to Fredericksburg, and commenced putting up winter quarters. On the 31st moved into them, and for the first time in a year or two we have with our rations some coffee, sugar, and dried apples. The year 1864, January 8. It has been snowing and is very cold. Some of the boys have formed a dramatic company and I went to see them play Toodles. There were 2 men shot in our brigade for desertion today. Nothing of interest until Enthi. January 9 left our camp at sunup, got 5 miles and halted in the woods. We have been detailed to run 2 sawmills and we are now putting up winter quarters there. January 16th. Nothing more until today. W.R. Berryhill has got the smallpox. Quite a number of us were in the same quarters with him, but none of us caught the disease. I was detailed to work at the mills, and therefore I am learning a new trade. Live and learn. January 20th. Hard work until today, when we were sent out to lay a plank road. While at work, General Lee and his daughter rode by us, and soon after a courier came from his headquarters and gave us some woolen socks and gloves, sent to us from his daughter. Nothing more worth recording this month. February of 2. While hard at work in the woods hauling stocks for the mill, my furlough came for 18 days. So I was relieved. On the 3D I left camp and got home on the morning of the 6th. It took me several days to get accustomed to living as a civilian, as I have been in camp for 2 years at a stretch. I had a very good time, and will always be grateful for the kindness shown me by everyone while at home. February 23rd. Reached camp today, and found that my regiment had marched once since I left. This was the first I missed since my regiment was formed. Nothing more this month. March 1st, raining hard. Left camp at 9 this morning, halted at dark 9 miles from Madison Courthouse. Snowing tonight. We had a hard road to travel, and when we got to our destination, the enemy had gone. March 2nd, started back to camp. The weather was clear and cold. Got there at 7 in the evening, and I stiff from walking. We marched 18 miles today. March 3rd. Left camp at 8 this morning to intercept General Kilpatrick, who is scouting in our lines. We formed in line of battle, had all the roads guarded when we found out that he was already on his way to the peninsula, so we returned to camp. 20 miles today. March 4th. I am as stiff as an old man this morning from yesterday's march on the plank road. March 5. We left the mills this morning and returned to our brigade, a distance of 5 miles. Nothing more up to the 17th, March 17th. An order was read out at dress parade that all troops in the Army would be held until the end of the war. This was nothing of importance to us as we enlisted for that time. It is raining and snowing very hard and almost every day. Our regiment is not in winter quarters, for we expect to move when the bad weather stops. We had a snowball fight. Our regiment with the 43D North Carolina, then our brigade with Battle's brigade. It was lots of fun. Nothing more until the 26th. March 26th. We were visited today by our governor, Zeb Vance, who made us a speech of 2.5 hours duration. With him on the platform was General Lee, General Ewell, and several others. March 28th. We were reviewed today by our governor. When I say reviewed, I mean all the North Carolina troops in our corps. After the review, we went to Ramseur's brigade, where he spoke again. So did Generals Early, Rhodes, and Stewart. That is all that is worth recording this month. April 1st, left camp at 8 this morning to go on picket 12 miles from our camp. Our brigade went on picket at Raccoon Ford and picketed up to Moulton's Ford. Raining hard today also on the 2D. The river is 10 feet above common watermark. April 3rd. As I have not heard from my parents since the war, they living in New York, I thought I would send a personal advertisement to a New York paper to let them know that my brother and myself are well, and for them to send an answer through the Richmond paper. I gave this to a Yankee picket, who promised me he would send it to New York. Nothing more up to the 7th. April 7th. This is a day of fasting and prayer, set apart by President Davis. April 9th. We're relieved today by Dole's Georgia Brigade. Got to camp at 1 in the evening, raining very hard all day. Nothing more up to the 14th. April 14th. I went to A.P. Hill's Corps to visit my friend Lieutenant Roosler, and returned to camp on the 15th. April 15th. Nothing more up to the 18th. April 18th. Our Corps of sharpshooters went out today target practicing. We shoot a distance of 500 yards offhand. Some very good shooting was done. April 20th. I hit the bullseye today. We are practicing every day up to the 23D April 23rd. Went to Moulton's Ford, met Stonewall Brigade on our way, and had some lively talk with them, all in fun, of course. Stayed on picket until 30th, then we were relieved at 1:1 in the morning and reached camp at 2. May 1st. Rumors are flying that we will soon get hard fighting. Nothing more up to the 4th. May 4th. This morning we got orders to be ready at a moment's notice. Broke camp at noon. Marched to our old breastworks at Mine Run, 7 miles from camp. Rested 2 hours and moved forward toward the river 3 miles further and halted. May 5th. Moved this morning, feeling for the enemy, and came up to them at noon, 5 miles from the run, in the wilderness. It certainly is a wilderness. It is almost impossible for a man to walk, as the woods are thick with an underbrush growth and all kinds of shrubbery, old logs, grapevines, and goodness knows what. My corps of sharpshooters was ordered to the front. We formed in line and advanced to the enemy. We fought them very hard for 3 hours, they falling back all the time. Our sharpshooters line got mixed up with Gordon's brigade and fought with them. In one charge we got to the most elevated place in the wilderness. We looked back for our brigade but saw it not. Just then a Yankee officer came up and we took him prisoner. Some of Gordon's men took him to the rear. 6 of our regiment, sharpshooters, myself included, went to the right to join our regiment, but were picked up by the Yankees and made prisoners. We were run back in their line on the double quick. When we got to their rear, we found about 300 of our men were already prisoners. The Yankees lost very heavily in this fight, more than we did. Although we lost heavy enough, but my heavens, what an army they have got. It seems to me that there is 10 of them to 1 of us. It looks strange that we could deliver such fearful blows when, in fact, if numbers counted, they should have killed us 2 years ago. In going to their rear, we passed through 4 lines of battle and reinforcements still coming up, while we are satisfied with, or at least have no more than 1 line of battle. May 6th. Fighting commenced at daylight and lasted all day. So did it last with their everlasting reinforcements. If General Lee only had half their men and those men were rebels, we would go to Washington in 2 weeks. When he has fought such an army for 4 years, it certainly shows we have the generals and the fighting stock on our side, and they have the hirelings. Look at our army, and you will see them in rags and barefooted. But among the Yankees I see nothing but an abundance of everything. Still, they haven't whipped the rebels. Several of our boys came in as prisoners today, with them Engel of our company. They think I was killed, so does my brother. But as yet the bullet has not done its last work for your humble servant. May 7th. We are still penned up as prisoners in the rear of the army, close by General Grant's headquarters. A great many prisoners came in today. From some of them I heard that my brother was well. May 8th. We left this place at dark last night, but only got a distance of 2 miles, and it took us until 9 in the morning of the 9th. May 9th. Started again this morning and passed over the Chancellorsville battlefield. Marched 12 miles today. We passed a brigade of Negro troops. They gave us a terrible cursing and hollered, "Fort Pillow" at us. I'm only sorry that this brigade of Negroes was not there, then they certainly would not curse us now. We halted at dark on the plank road 7 miles from Fredericksburg. May 10th. Fighting today at Spotsylvania Courthouse. Prisoners still coming in, 2 more from my company. May 2. This morning about 800 more prisoners came in. Most of them were from my brigade, as well as from Dole's Georgians. I was surprised to see my brother with them. He was taken yesterday, but before he surrendered, he sent 2 of the enemy to their long home with his bayonet. May 12th. Raining hard all day and fighting all last night. About 2 o'clock this afternoon, about 2,000 prisoners came in. With them, Major General Johnson and Brigadier General Stewart. We have moved 4 miles nearer to Fredericksburg. I suppose they think we are too close to our own lines, and they are afraid we will be recaptured, as it was a few days ago. We heard our boys, or as the Yankees call it, the rebel yell. We prisoners also gave the rebel yell. A few minutes after that, they brought cannon to bear on us, and we were told to stop, or they would open on us. We stopped. May 13th. Left here this morning and passed through Fredericksburg. Crossed the Rappahannock on pontoon bridges, and got to Belle Plaine on the Potomac at 3 o'clock, 19 miles today. It rained all day and it is very muddy. May 14. We are still camped here. Have been prisoners since the 5th of this month and have drawn 3.5 days' rations. On that kind of a diet, I am not getting very fat. We certainly would have suffered a great deal, but our Yankee guard gave us quite a lot of their own rations. May 15th, still here. They are fighting very hard on the front. May 16th, left this morning at 11 in a tugboat and from here packed into the steamer S.R. Spalding. We are now on our way to a regular prison. We got there at 8 o'clock tonight and found it to be Point Lookout Mountain 50 miles from Belle Plaine. It is in St. Mary's County. We were drawn up in line, searched for valuables, and they taken from us and marched to prison 1 mile from the landing. There are 16 men in each tent. May 17th, saw Mac Sample, Will Stone, and several of our company today that have been prisoners since the Battle of Gettysburg. We get 2 meals a day. May 18th, we are divided in divisions and companies. There is 1,000 in each division and 100 in each company. A sergeant commands each company. We get light bread one day and crackers the other. May 19th, saw Darnell of my company today. He was just from the front. He brings us very bad news. Our General Daniels was killed, which is certain of a great loss to us, for he was a good and brave man. Also our major of the 53D, Iredell, and my Captain White, all killed. Colonel Owens, my colonel, was mortally wounded, and quite a number of my company were killed and wounded. He says there is only 7 of our company left, and that our Lieutenant Colonel Moorhead is commanding Daniels' brigade. May 20th. 3 years ago today, the old North State left the Union, and we went to the front full of hopes to speedily show the Yankee government that the South had a right to leave the Union. But today, how dark it looks. May 21st, I heard today that my brother Morris was a prisoner at Fort Delaware, Pa. I asked for a parole today to go and see my parents in New York, but they could not see it. May 22nd, nothing new from the front. May 23rd. We are guarded by Negro troops who are as mean as hell. At each meal there is a guard placed over 500 prisoners who go to their meals in ranks of 4. We are not allowed to cross a certain line called the dead line. But as 500 men go at one time to meals, of course near the door there is always a rush. Today one of our men accidentally crossed the line. He was pushed over by the crowd when a black devil shot and killed him and wounded 2 others. May 24th. One of yesterday's wounded died today. This Negro company was taken away today, as there is no telling what even men without arms will do to such devils, although they have got guns. May 25th. Engel received a letter from his father today, who told him they had seen my parents and I would hear from them soon. This is the first time that I have heard about my parents since the commencement of the war. Thank God my parents, as well as my sisters and brothers, are well. May 26th. Received 2 letters today, one from home and one from my brother Pincus, who went to Washington on his way to visit Morris and myself, as he has to get a pass from headquarters before he can see us. He was refused and returned home. Our daily labor as prisoners is that at 5 in the morning we have roll call, 6 breakfast, 500 at a time. As one lot gets through, another takes its place until 4 lots have eaten. We then stroll about the prison until 1 o'clock, when we eat dinner in the same style as breakfast, then loaf about again until sundown. Roll is called again, thus ending the day. We get for breakfast 5 crackers with worms in them. As a substitute for butter, a small piece of pork, and a tin cup full of coffee. Dinner, 4 of the above crackers, a 1/4 pound mule meat, and a cup of bean soup. And every 4th day an 8-ounce loaf of white bread. Nothing more this month. June 8th. There is nothing new up to today, when I received a box of eatables, 1 or 2 shirts, and 1 pair of pants from home. The only way we can pass our time off is playing cards and chess. 600 prisoners came in today, with them a lady who is an artillery sergeant.